Researchers have spent many years arguing about how to characterize the differences between human and animal communication. However, all agree that human language is more complex, more sophisticated, and more powerful than any other animal communication system. The question posed the skills and abilities of a child to acquire a certain language. To be able to understand further, a child must possess the following skills and abilities in acquisition. First, children have to learn to distinguish speech sounds from other noises so they know which sounds to pay attention to. Second, so they need to distinguish, for example, between human speech and bird songs, and between human speech and other human sounds such as whistling and humming. Third, then once they learn to recognize these speech sounds, they have to learn to produce them by manipulating the passage of air through their vocal tract and mouth using precise sequence of lips, tongue, and vocal cord movements. Fourth is, children then have to learn how to combine speech sounds into meaningful words. Fifth, once children have discovered meaning of words, they need to work out how words fit together in sentences. They have to learn that changes in meaning may be signaled by sequencing words in different ways. 6. Finally, children have to learn to string their thoughts together in a coherent way in order to hold a conversation to respond appropriately to sentences of others.
What do you think makes a language? A linguist named Charles Hackett defined the characteristics of language back in 1960. He contended that there is convincing justification for the belief that all of the world's languages share every one of them. Although other animal communication systems share some of these design features, only human languages are said to have all of the following features. So here are the design features according to Charles Hackett. The first one is the vocal auditory channel. This refers to the idea that speaking and hearing is the primary mode of communication for humans. Transmission of broadcast signals and reception are transmitted in all directions when a human speaks. However, listeners perceive the direction from which the sounds are coming. The third one is the rapid fading. Rapid fading refers to the temporary quality of a language. Language sounds exist for only a short period of time before they are no longer perceived. The next one is interchangeability. Interchangeability has the idea that humans can send and receive identical linguistic signals. Humans are not restricted in the types of messages they can say or hear. Take note that this characteristic is not shared by all species. In total feedback is simple as just we hear what we say. Next is specialization. The primary function of linguistic signals is communication, not any other biological function. When human speaks or signs, it is usually on purpose. Semanticity. In semanticity, certain sound signals are directly related to specific meanings. Arbitrariness. Languages are typically composed of arbitrary as well as iconic symbols. In spoken languages, iconicity is expressed through onomatopoeia. Discreteness. Linguistic representations can be divided into small discrete units that combine in rule-governed ways. In English, for example, number is represented by the plural morpheme s, which can be added to the end of any noun. The plural morpheme is perceived categorically rather than continuously. We cannot express smaller or larger quantities by varying the volume with which we pronounce the S. Duality patterning. Meaningful messages are composed of distinct smaller units which are composed of distinct smaller meaningless units. Displacement. Displacement refers to the notion that humans can converse about things that are not physically present or doesn't even exist. Prevarication. Prevarication is where humans have the ability to make false or meaningless statements when using a language. Next is productivity. Productivity refers to the ability of language users to generate and comprehend novel utterances. Traditional transmission. It is a belief that while humans are born with innate language abilities, language is learned after a birth in a social setting. Learnability. Language can be taught and learned. Similarly, As a speaker learns their first language, they are able to learn other languages. Reflexiveness. Another distinguishing feature of human languages is not shared by any animal communication. Humans can use language to describe what language is, talk about its structure, and discuss the idea of language with others through reflexiveness.
All animals communicate, like crabs wave their claws at each other so that they signal that they are healthy. Honeybees perform complex dances to let other bees know the location and quality of a food source. Dolphins use whistles to identify names, gender, and age of the other dolphins. All these animals have impressive communication systems. But the question is, can we teach animals about human language? To answer that question, we can look at 4 specific qualities that are often associated with language: the discreteness, grammar, productivity, and displacement. Discreteness is a set of an individual units such as sounds, words to combine. Grammar is a set of rules how to combine a words. Productivity is the ability to use a language to create a number of messages. And lastly, we have the displacement. Displacement is the ability to talk about the things that aren't in front of you, such as the past, future, and fictional events. Researchers attempted to teach language to a variety of animals like dolphins, sea lions, and a lot of more. But most success has been shown with chimpanzees. Great apes like chimps and gorillas are great communicators. Researchers began to use a modified American Sign Language with chimpanzees. In fact, a chimpanzee named Washu developed a vocabulary of about 160 words and combining them into a simple sentences, but showing a little evidence of mastering the rules of a language. In conclusion, animals can communicate through other means. Animals are capable of a lot of things but not in language. Because human language have features in particular in displacement, creativity, and duality of patterning. Human language have also syntax, set of rules for connecting words together to make a statement and a questions. We can craft and understand complex sentences unlike animals.
What is required in order for children to acquire a language? The nature versus nurture debate extends to the topic of language acquisition. Today, most researchers acknowledge that both nature and nurture plays a role in language acquisition. However, some researchers emphasizes the influences of learning language acquisition while others emphasizes biological influences. Basically, language acquisition, it's how we learn language when we are just babies. The question is central to nature-nurture. Nature, traditional language was seen as an innate human ability. A child who was taught to speak as an infant would eventually develop language or be able to catch up once taught. While the nurture proponent says that language is a product of upbringing and environment. It also says that language is a product of parental upbringing. To simplify this, nature is due to inherent genetics, while the nurture is due to environment. So, what makes it a nature trait? There are arguments that make it very difficult to deny nature's involvement. This theory is also known as the special gift position, and was founded by linguist revolutionary Noam Chomsky. First, people are empowered by their urge to speak. This is exemplified that children make sounds and try to communicate when they interact with others before they can officially speak. Other reason is because children automatically learn grammatical structure without ever being taught. It makes it quite difficult to deny nature's appearance when it comes to language acquisition. Now that we have established that language acquisition is in fact an aspect of nature, what makes it a nurture? This argument is also known as the emergence argument. The reason why it is called the emergence argument is because it claims that the only way to explain this variation in the proficiency levels of this language aspect is that because language learning is essentially just an emergence from multiple sources. One of these sources is that friends and families have a clear influence on language acquisition of babies. For example, repeating what the baby says or elaborating on something what the baby says. Another point encouraging the nurture notion is the fact that language can be learned through other means than just talking. Another reason supporting nurture would be one of the most effective ways of learning language is being connected through error. If a child says something and the parents correct it, the child is learning and learning quicker.
Are you aware that language is a left brain activity? Left hemispheric language processing causes aphasia, a language disorder resulting from brain damage. A right hemisphere impairment diminishes aphasia. Conversation simulates left and right hemispheres. Anatomy's Paul Pierre Broca noticed its importance. The superior temporal gyrus was named by German neurologist Karl Wernicke. Language evolution shares brain regions with speech.
So what's the deal with the language regions in the brain? There are several parts of the brain that perform specialized functions. First is the Broca's area. Just to clarify something for you, the left hemispheric region, known as the Broca's area, is responsible for speech articulation and production. This vital region has been linked to our capacity to express ourselves verbally or in writing, as well as our command in English language. Second is the Wernicke's area. Wernicke's area is linked in Broca's region by a neutral pathway in posterior superior temporal lobe which processes language. Understanding is a big part of Wernicke's domain of expertise. This region has been linked to the processing of language, both written and spoken. Third is the motor cortex. The motor cortex in your frontal lobes permits you to speak the words that are formed by regions in your frontal, temporal, and parietal lobes. The left side of your brain is most likely where the majority of your language brain activity takes place. Lastly, the arcuate fasciculus. An important function is played by the arcuate fasciculus in repetition by serving a neuronal route linking the expressive or the Broca's area and the receptive Wernicke's area in language regions. Language production and comprehension are thought to be tied together in this organ. These areas of the brain are so linked so they cannot operate alone. The process of learning a language is one of the most essential aspects of human development, and the brain is definitely involved. The brain not only to store linguistic information but also adjust the grammatical regularities of language over the years of language learning.
Young children learn language at an incredible pace. The brain networks underlying many language skills are already in place when a baby is born, and a considerable amount of language learning takes place the first year of life. Even before a baby can talk, the areas of her brain related to language are developing rapidly and also absorbing new informations. The second prerequisite we need to acquire language is an environment in which we're exposed to a language. Now let's take a look at this example, a very famous case that demonstrates the importance of exposure. From about 20 months of age, Jenny was being maltreated by her father. During the day, she was strapped to a potty, and at night, she was transferred into a restrictive sleeping bag. She was kept in a bare room with very little to stimulate her senses, and she was raised in virtual silence. When discovered at the age of 13, Jenny understood only a few words and could only produce 2 phrases because she had not been exposed to human speech during her childhood. In fact, even children with loving parents will not acquire language unless they are exposed to it. Deaf children do not acquire a language unless they have intensive training or exposed to sign language from early on. It is not clear whether the way in which we speak to children has an effect over and above this. For example, although many parents use a distinctive speech style when talking to their children, we do not know whether this has an effect on how easy children learn. Interactions with parents and caregivers create the environment in which children can begin to learn the language they hear adults speaking. Language is a social process, and a child's language environment is a foundation for the development of the early language and literacy skills necessary for children to be ready for school. Throughout May, we'll be taking a closer look at the importance of early language development, and we'll examine some ways in which all of us can shape the future of our community by fostering strong language development among our children.